Halloween had always been my favorite time of year. The crisp autumn air, the thrill of costume parties, and the endless supply of candy brought out a childlike joy in me. However, the year I turned 18, everything changed. It started with an envelope slipped under my door on the night of October 1st. The envelope was plain, with no return address, just my name written in an ornate script. I picked it up and examined it, a shiver of anticipation running down my spine. Inside was a single piece of paper with a list of rules. At first, I thought it was some kind of prank or a promotional gimmick for a haunted house, but as I read through the rules, the feeling of dread washed over me. The rules: 1. Do not answer the door after midnight. 2. Wear your costume at all times. 3. Avoid all mirrors. 4. Do not leave your house until dawn. 5. If you hear whispers, cover your ears. 6. You must have a pumpkin lit in your window. 7. Stay away from strangers. 8. Trust no one. The weight of the rules settled heavily in my stomach. I glanced around my dimly lit room, half expecting to see someone watching me. I had no idea where these rules came from, or what would happen if I broke them. As Halloween approached, the air grew thick with tension, the excitement of the season overshadowed by a looming sense of dread. I shared the rules with my best friend Tara, hoping to laugh it off. We were supposed to go to a big party downtown, the kind where people dressed up as their favorite horror characters and danced until dawn. But when I read the rules aloud, her face turned serious. "What if it's real?" she asked, biting her lip. "What if someone is messing with you?" "I doubt it," I scoffed. "It's probably just some weird Halloween tradition." But deep down, I couldn't shake the unease. Each day leading up to Halloween, I found myself growing more paranoid. I avoided mirrors, convinced that if I looked too long, something would look back at me. I double-checked my doors and windows, ensuring everything was locked. On the night of Halloween, Tara and I decided to stick together. I dressed up as a witch, complete with a pointy hat and a flowing black dress, while Tara went as a vampire. We planned to attend the party early but promised each other we would be home before midnight. As the sun set, casting an orange glow over the neighborhood, I felt a strange sense of finality, as if the night was marking the end of something. We made our way to the party, the streets buzzing with people. Laughter echoed as costumes fluttered by. Ghosts, ghouls, and goblins mingled under the bright streetlights. The atmosphere was intoxicating, but as we approached the venue, I felt a strange pull to go home. I brushed it off as nerves and pressed on. Inside, the music was loud, and the energy electrifying. People danced and laughed, and for a moment I forgot about the rules. Tara and I moved to the rhythm, enjoying the night, but as the clock struck 11, I felt a chill run down my spine. "Let's head back," I said, trying to ignore the sinking feeling in my gut. "Just a little longer," Tara insisted, pulling me back toward the crowd. I reluctantly stayed, but I kept glancing at the time. Finally, just after midnight, I couldn't take it anymore. "Let's go, now." We slipped out into the night, the cool air hitting us like a splash of cold water. The streetlights flickered and shadows danced across the ground. As we walked, the atmosphere shifted. The joyful laughter from the party faded into an eerie silence. When we reached my front porch, I felt an unsettling urge to glance behind me. The street was empty, but something seemed off. It was too quiet. I unlocked the door and stepped inside, dragging Tara with me. As I closed the door, I noticed something in the window, a figure lurking in the shadows. My heart raced, and I instinctively locked the door. "Did you see that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Tara nodded, her eyes wide. "What do we do?" "We follow the rules," I said, remembering the list. I turned off the porch light and lit a candle inside the pumpkin I had carved earlier that week. It flickered ominously in the dark, casting eerie shadows on the walls. "Okay, now what?" Tara whispered, glancing around as if expecting something to leap out at us. "Now we wait. Until dawn," I replied, trying to sound braver than I felt. As the hours ticked by, I found it harder to shake the creeping dread. I remembered the second rule: wear your costume at all times. I looked at Tara, who was already pulling her cape tighter around her shoulders. Suddenly, the air grew thick with tension. The only sound was the wind rustling against the window. Then I heard it, the faintest whispering, like voices just outside my hearing range. I froze, adrenaline flooding my veins. "Do you hear that?" I asked Tara, my voice barely a whisper. "Hear what?" she replied, her face pale. "It's coming from outside," I said, my heart racing. The whispers grew louder, swirling around us, almost melodic but deeply unsettling. I remembered the fifth rule: if you hear whispers, cover your ears. I pressed my palms against my ears, but the sound still penetrated. Tara looked terrified, her eyes darting to the window. "What's happening?" "I don't know," I shouted, panic creeping into my voice. Just then, a loud knock echoed through the house, making us jump. "Don't answer it," I shouted, remembering the first rule. The knocking continued, more insistent this time, accompanied by low murmurs. It sounded like a chorus of voices chanting my name. "Is someone there?" Tara called out, her voice trembling. "Don't," I pleaded, but she was already moving toward the door. Tara hesitated, her hand hovering over the doorknob. The knocking intensified, rhythmic and urgent, each thud resonating like a drum in my chest. I grabbed her arm, pulling her back just as she began to turn the knob. "Don't open it. We have to stick to the rules," I shouted, my voice shaking with fear. The knocking stopped abruptly, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. For a moment, I thought we had imagined it. But then I heard the whispering again, clearer now, wrapping around us like an invisible fog. I forced myself to breathe, trying to regain control. "Let's just sit down, okay? We can wait it out," I said, backing away from the door and dragging Tara to the couch. We sat in silence, the only sound being the faint flickering of the candle. The pumpkin's glow created twisted shadows on the walls, dancing in the darkness. I clutched Tara's hand, feeling the tremors in her fingers. "Do you think it's just a prank?" she asked, glancing nervously at the door. "I don't know," I admitted, my heart racing, "but it feels too real." Minutes turned into an eternity as we sat there, straining to hear anything beyond the walls of my home. The whispers faded in and out, like a broken radio. Suddenly, the power flickered, then went out entirely, plunging us into darkness. Panic washed over me. "Tara, do you have your phone?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She fumbled in her pocket and pulled it out, its screen illuminating her terrified face. "What do we do?" she asked, her voice trembling. "We stick to the rules," I replied, my mind racing. "We have to keep the pumpkin lit. That's our only light." I got up, feeling my way through the dark toward the kitchen where the pumpkin sat on the windowsill. As I reached it, I noticed something strange. The air felt colder around the pumpkin, a sudden chill wrapping around me like a blanket. "Hurry," Tara urged, her voice echoing through the darkness. I grabbed a lighter from the counter and struck it, holding it to the wick. The flame flickered to life, casting a warm glow around us. As I turned back, I noticed the window. Something was outside, moving just beyond the glass. I squinted, but all I could see were shadows. "Did you see that?" I asked, my heart pounding. Tara nodded, gripping her phone tightly. "What if it's them?" My mind raced with fear. "We can't let them in. We need to wait until dawn." Just then, I heard a soft scratching sound, like nails on wood. It came from the door again. I swallowed hard, remembering the first rule: we can't answer it, no matter what. "Are you sure?" Tara whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "Yes, we can't break the rules," I insisted. The scratching grew louder, more frantic. "Please," a voice called, sounding desperate. "Let me in. I need help." Tara glanced at me, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "What if it's someone in trouble?" "Or a trap," I countered, my heart racing. "We can't take that chance." I moved back to the couch, pulling Tara with me. We huddled together, the candle casting flickering shadows around the room. The scratching continued, interspersed with frantic pleas for help. "Please, I'm begging you, let me in," the voice cried, sounding closer now. My stomach churned as the urgency in the voice clawed at my insides, but I forced myself to remember the rules, knowing they were all that stood between us and whatever was out there. Minutes passed, each one stretching like an eternity. The atmosphere grew thick with tension, and the air seemed to pulse with energy. Then, just as I thought the voice would drive me mad, it stopped. Silence enveloped us, broken only by the distant sound of wind howling outside. I exchanged a glance with Tara, both of us holding our breath, waiting for the next sound. And then it came, a whisper, low and raspy, right next to my ear. "Let me in." I jumped, startled, and Tara screamed, dropping her phone. It skidded across the floor, its light flickering as it landed. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice shaking. Tara nodded, her eyes wide with terror. "We have to do something." "No," I said, gripping her arm tightly. "We can't break the rules." But as I spoke, the whispers intensified, echoing all around us. They morphed into a cacophony of voices, each one begging, pleading, promising safety, whispering lies. "Cover your ears," I shouted, but it was too late. The words penetrated our thoughts, wrapping around us like chains. Tara screamed again, her hands clamping over her ears, but it didn't stop the words from seeping in. I followed suit, my heart pounding as I tried to block them out. I felt the weight of fear pressing down on me, choking me. I wanted to break the rules, to run to the door and escape whatever horror waited us, but I knew that breaking even one rule could mean the end. Just then, the pumpkin's light flickered and dimmed, casting us into deeper shadows. Panic surged within me. "No, no, no," I cried, scrambling to find the lighter. Tara's eyes darted around, wide with fear. "What's happening?" The whispers grew louder, more insistent, each voice competing for attention. "Let us in. We can protect you. You're safe with us." I couldn't think straight. The darkness felt alive, pulsing with energy. I struck the lighter, holding it close to the pumpkin. "Stay back," I yelled, the flame flickering to life again. But just as it lit, I saw something in the window, a dark figure, twisted and grotesque, its face a blur of shadows. I stumbled back, terror flooding my veins. The figure outside pressed against the glass, its features obscured by the darkness, but I could make out the outline of a face, long hollow eyes that seemed to pierce through the glass, searching for something. I could barely breathe, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. "Tara, we need to get away from the window," I urged, dragging her back toward the living room. Is it trying to get in?" she stammered, her voice shaking. "I don't know, but we can't let it. We have to stay away from the door," I said, my mind racing through the rules, desperately trying to keep us safe. As we backed away, the whispers outside intensified, swirling around us like a storm. The voice from before returned, clearer now, almost pleading. "Let me in. I promise I'll protect you. Just open the door." "No," I shouted, feeling a surge of defiance. "We can't let it in. It's breaking the rules." But doubt crept in. What if it really was someone in trouble? What if we were making a mistake? The anxiety gnawed at me, a relentless force that threatened to drown me in fear. Just then, the pumpkin flickered again, its light waning. I rushed to it, holding the lighter to the wick, my hands trembling. "Stay lit, please," I whispered, willing the flame to burn brighter. But the darkness seemed to be closing in, the whispers growing louder, more chaotic. "You're running out of time. Let me in," the voice pleaded, and for a moment, I felt a strange connection, as if it were reaching out to me, offering salvation. "Tara, what if it really is someone who needs help?" she asked, her voice quivering. "It could be a trick. We don't know what's out there," I insisted, trying to keep my voice steady. The scratching returned, this time louder and more frantic, sending chills down my spine. "Please, I can't stay out here. Let me in." I felt a tear slip down my cheek, the weight of the situation crashing down on me. The candlelight flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced along the walls, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, studied. "Stay away from the door," I repeated, panic rising within me. I backed away further, clutching the lighter as if it were a lifeline. The whispers began to morph into a chant, echoing through the house, enveloping us in an overwhelming cacophony. "Let us in. You're not safe. Let us in." "Cover your ears," I shouted again, but the voices seemed to penetrate every barrier I put up. Then, without warning, the lights flickered back on, bathing the room in a harsh glare. I blinked against the brightness, my heart racing. The figure was gone from the window, but the atmosphere still felt charged, as if something lingered just out of sight. I turned to Tara, who looked as terrified as I felt. "What just happened?" she whispered, her eyes darting around the room. "I don't know," I replied, trying to steady my breath, "but we have to stay vigilant." We huddled on the couch, the pumpkin's flickering light casting long shadows around us. The whispers had quieted, leaving an unsettling silence that felt heavier than the noise. Minutes passed, and I began to feel a false sense of security. Maybe we had weathered the storm. Maybe the worst was over. But then, just as I thought we were in the clear, the front door rattled violently. My heart dropped, the sound echoing in my ears like a death knell. "No, no," I gasped, my stomach churning. The knocking returned, louder this time, accompanied by the whispers that swirled around us like a storm. "Open the door. You're running out of time. Let us in." "Tara, we can't," I shouted, my voice rising in panic. "We have to wait until dawn." The knocking turned frantic, as if something outside was desperate to get in. "Please, you're in danger. Let me in." "What if it's real?" Tara whimpered, her voice cracking. I felt the weight of her words. What if we were making a terrible mistake? The whispers were now a blend of voices, some urgent, some pleading, and I could feel the pressure building, the anxiety coiling around me like a snake. "Stay strong," I said, trying to reassure both of us. "We just have to hold out a little longer. It will all be over by dawn." But the knocking continued, relentless, as if something outside was throwing itself against the door. "You can't hide. Let me in. I'm your only chance." Tara squeezed my hand, her eyes filled with fear. "I don't know how much longer I can take this. We have to stay strong. We can't let them in," I insisted. But even I wasn't sure how long we could last against the growing pressure. The shadows in the room began to shift, taking on grotesque shapes as the candle flickered once more. I could feel something watching us, a presence lingering just beyond the door, waiting for our resolve to break. And then the whispers grew silent, replaced by an unnatural stillness that filled the room. I glanced around, my heart racing, every instinct screaming at me that something was coming. "Do you feel that?" Tara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Before I could answer, the door burst open, slamming against the wall with a deafening bang. I screamed as a rush of cold air swept into the room, extinguishing the pumpkin's light and plunging us into darkness once again. The sudden rush of cold was like a physical blow, wrapping around us with an icy grip. I struggled to catch my breath, the darkness swallowing me whole. "Tara," I called out, panic rising in my chest. "I'm here," she shouted back, her voice shaky. The door swung wide, revealing nothing but shadows and the faint outlines of furniture. My heart raced as I felt my way along the wall, desperate to find the lighter. The darkness felt alive, pulsating around us, filled with whispers that seemed to echo from every corner of the room. "You've broken the rules," the voices hissed, low and taunting. "You shouldn't have let the door open. Now you must pay the price." I struck the lighter, its flame flickering to life, illuminating the room in a faint glow. I saw Tara, her eyes wide with terror, and I rushed to her side. "We have to get out of here," I urged, but the whispers grew louder, drowning out my voice. "Running won't save you," they chorused, the sound echoing in my mind. "You can't escape your fate." I felt the walls closing in around us, the very air thick with malice. "Stay back," I shouted, brandishing the lighter like a weapon. But the shadows twisted and turned, forming into shapes that danced just beyond the reach of the light. I could see outlines of figures, their faces distorted, their eyes hollow and filled with rage. "What are you?" Tara cried, pressing against me. "We are the ones you ignored, the ones you didn't trust. Now you must face the consequences." The figures surged forward and I felt a rush of cold air as they closed in. "You should have let us in," they shrieked, their voices overlapping in a chaotic frenzy. I felt the weight of their anger pressing down on me, suffocating. "We didn't know," I shouted, desperation creeping into my voice. "Too late for apologies," they hissed, and suddenly the flame of the lighter flickered violently before going out. Darkness enveloped us, and I felt Tara's hand slip from mine. "Tara," I screamed, reaching out into the void. But there was no response. Panic gripped me as I stumbled, trying to find her. The The whispers grew louder, swirling around me like a cyclone, drowning out my thoughts. "Join us," they called, their voices now a twisted chorus. "Embrace the darkness." I fought against the pull, my heart racing as I tried to focus. I remembered the rules, the desperate need to survive. Rule number 4, I whispered to myself, "Do not leave your house until dawn." But how could we survive this? I took a deep breath, forcing myself to push back against the shadows. "We're stronger than this," I shouted into the darkness. Just then, I felt a flicker of light. A match struck somewhere in the room. "Tara," I called, feeling a surge of hope. "Over here," she shouted, her voice echoing in the darkness. I rushed toward the sound, and as I turned a corner, the light illuminated her face. She held a candle, its flame flickering bravely against the encroaching darkness. "Stay close," I urged, grabbing her arm. The figures were still there, swirling just beyond the light, their faces contorted with rage. "You cannot escape. You've broken the rules," they howled, the cacophony echoing through the room. "We haven't," I shouted defiantly. "We're still here. We can still survive." The candlelight flickered, casting long shadows as the figures lurked just outside its glow. But I felt a sense of strength growing within me, a determination to fight back. "We will not be afraid," I declared, holding my ground. "We refuse to let you take us." The shadows recoiled, their forms writhing in anger. "You cannot resist us. We are everywhere." I took a step forward, feeling Tara's presence beside me. "We are stronger together," I shouted, lifting the candle high. As if in response, the shadows seemed to retreat, their whispers growing fainter. "This isn't over," they hissed, their voices tinged with desperation. "You will pay for your defiance." But I pushed the fear aside, focusing on the light we had. "We will make it to dawn," I vowed, feeling Tara's grip tighten around my arm. With renewed determination, we moved through the darkness, the candle flickering but illuminating our path. The shadows lingered just out of reach, whispering threats and taunts, but we pressed on, refusing to look back. Finally, we reached the front door. The hinges creaked as I pushed it open, the first light of dawn spilling into the room. The shadows recoiled, screeching in fury as the light washed over them. "No, you cannot escape." But it was too late. As the sun broke over the horizon, the shadows evaporated, their whispers fading into nothingness. Breathless, we stood in the doorway, watching as the last remnants of darkness dissipated. "We made it," Tara whispered, tears of relief streaming down her face. I hugged her tightly, feeling the weight of fear lift from my shoulders. "We followed the rules," I said, my voice shaky but filled with strength. But as the sun rose, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. The rules had saved us, but the darkness still lingered, a reminder that some things would never truly let go. As we stepped into the light, the whispers faded, but the shadows still loomed in the corners of my mind. Halloween would never feel the same again. The sun rose higher, illuminating the neighborhood in warm hues of orange and gold. I stood on my porch, staring into the brightening sky, my heart still racing from the night's horrors. Tara and I had escaped the shadows, but the memories of their whispers clung to me like a haunting melody. As we gathered our thoughts, I remembered the pumpkin. I turned to see it sitting on the windowsill, its candle finally extinguished, the wax dripping down the sides in grotesque formations. The vibrant orange hue had faded, a shell of what it had been just hours before. "Did that really happen?" Tara asked, her voice trembling as she gazed around the street, which seemed so normal now. Kids were already out, laughing and playing in their costumes. The chaos of the night felt like a distant nightmare. "I wish I could say it was just a bad dream," I replied, shaking my head, but it felt all too real. We took a step back into the house, the light pouring in, but failing to illuminate the shadows that still clung to the corners of the rooms. The air felt heavy, as if the weight of the night had left an imprint on my home. "What do we do now?" Tara asked, her brow furrowed. I thought for a moment, recalling the rules. "We need to make sure that whatever we experienced last night doesn't follow us. We have to protect ourselves." I grabbed the list of rules that had caused all this panic. The paper felt cold and brittle in my hands. "Maybe there's a way to break the cycle," I said, my mind racing. Together, we sat down at the kitchen table, the morning light casting long shadows across the surface. We spread the rules out before us, each one a reminder of our nightmarish experience. "Do not answer the door after midnight," I read aloud, my voice steady. "It seems that's when things turn chaotic." "Let's start with that one," Tara suggested. "Maybe we need to find a way to rewrite the rules, or even burn them." "Burning might work," I said, feeling a flicker of hope. "But we need to be careful. What if they come back?" As we discussed our options, I could feel a sense of urgency growing within me. We couldn't let our guard down. The whispers, the shadows, they could return if we didn't take action. I stood up and went to the window, glancing outside. The street was filled with laughter and joy, children running from house to house, collecting candy and enjoying the festive spirit. But something felt off. The air was thick with a tension that lingered just below the surface. "Do you think we should tell anyone?" Tara asked, her voice hesitant. "About what?" "That we encountered something supernatural last night." I scoffed, but the seriousness in her eyes made me reconsider. Maybe we could warn them about the rules. Tara nodded, her brow furrowing. "But what if they think we're crazy?" "Let them think that," I said, a surge of determination coursing through me. "We have to try. If there's even a chance we can help someone else avoid what we went through, it's worth it." After breakfast, we ventured into the neighborhood, gathering a small group of friends who had been part of our Halloween plans. I explained everything as best as I could, the panic in my voice evident as I recounted the night's events. Most of them laughed it off, brushing it aside as an elaborate prank. But a few listened, their expressions shifting as the gravity of my words sank in. "You can't be serious," one of them said, shaking their head. "I am serious. We followed a list of rules, and if you break them, something terrible could happen," I insisted. As the day progressed, I found myself feeling increasingly paranoid. I kept glancing at the shadows, half expecting to see those dark figures lurking just beyond the light. The laughter of children seemed to morph into something sinister, whispers echoing in my mind. That evening, I stayed up late, unable to shake the feeling that we hadn't seen the last of the darkness. Tara stayed with me, and we lit candles around the house, creating a barrier of light. As the clock struck midnight, a familiar unease settled in. I remembered the first rule: do not answer the door after midnight. My heart raced, and I glanced at Tara, who was staring at the door, her eyes wide. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. I strained to listen. At first I thought it was the wind, but then I heard it, the faint scratching, growing louder, accompanied by a voice, deep and haunting. "Let me in." We exchanged terrified glances, the memories of the night flooding back. "Stay away from the door," I shouted, my voice echoing through the silence. The voice continued, a haunting melody that reverberated through the air. "I promise I can protect you. Just let me in." "We have to do something," Tara cried, fear etched across her face. "No, we can't break the rules again," I shouted, feeling the weight of desperation pressing down on me. But even as I spoke, a part of me wondered if it was too late. The darkness had already seeped in, and the shadows danced just outside the light. "Maybe we can rewrite the rules," Tara suggested, her voice trembling. "What if that makes it worse?" I countered, feeling the panic rising again. "Or maybe it's our only chance," she insisted, the determination in her voice giving me a spark of hope. I hesitated, torn between fear and the desire to fight back. "Okay, let's try." We grabbed a piece of paper and a pen, quickly jotting down new rules, desperate to regain control. "No more rules based on fear," I wrote. "We create our own safety." As we finished writing, the scratching grew louder, the voice more insistent. "Let me in. You don't understand. I can save you." The candle flames flickered, casting elongated shadows that danced along the walls. I could feel the presence of the darkness pressing against us, waiting for our resolve to falter. With a deep breath, I turned to Tara. "Let's light these new rules and send the old ones away." We held the paper to the flame, watching as it ignited, the old rules turning to ash. "We take back our power," I shouted, feeling a surge of strength course through me. The whispers grew frantic, the shadows swirling in chaos. "You cannot escape. You are ours." But we stood firm, the light of the candle illuminating our faces. No, we refused to be afraid. As the last remnants of the paper crumbled to ash, the darkness seemed to recoil, the whispers fading into silence. We held our ground, feeling a sense of triumph wash over us. "We did it," I breathed, my heart racing. but as I looked around, a nagging feeling lingered in my mind. The shadows still lurked in the corners, their whispers gone, but their presence still felt. Would they return, or had we truly banished them? As the dawn broke on a new day, I realized that while we had fought bravely, the darkness would always be there, a reminder of the night we faced our fears and the rules that had once bound us. We had rewritten our fate, but the memories would linger, a haunting reminder that sometimes the shadows are closer than they appear. The true test would come not just in the darkness of Halloween, but in the everyday choices we make. The courage to face our fears, the strength to protect ourselves, and the determination to create our own light in a world that often feels overwhelming. As the sun rose, I felt a flicker of hope. We had survived, and together we would continue to face whatever came next, stronger than before. And as I glanced at the pumpkin, now just a hollow shell, I knew that while Halloween may never feel the same, we had the power to redefine it. Together, we could keep the darkness at bay, one rule at a time.